he said, can change one voice can change a room, and if it can change a room, then it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. And if it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. Your voice can change the world. So welcome once again. And please note that this event will be recorded. Just yes. So yeah, let's begin. I want to start off by introducing our first speaker for today, Rejoice Majeta. It's such an honor to introduce Rejoice because she works with a lot of university chapters. And so it's so exciting because she's someone who really does understand the work of Amnesty on the ground. And today she's also a board member of the Amnesty International South Africa. And today she's here. You're not, but it's fine. You're still an important member. You're still an important member. But I would like to, she's going to be here to introduce the alumni network and also talk about the vision, the goal, what was the idea behind founding the alumni network, and also present the Human Rights Defenders campaign. So over to you, Rejoice.
Thank you so much, Nobukosi, for that warm welcome. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Like Nobukosi said, my name is Rejoice, now Mutaung. I'm pleased to be here with you guys today, and I'm glad to see so many people joining and making an effort to come in and learn more about who the Alumni Network are. I'm not a part of the AISA board, but I'd like to think that I've played my part in ensuring that,
Yeah.
you know what, we have a really good board. And yeah, you know, there's just been a lot that's happened at AISA, and really grateful to have been a part of or to be a part of what is happening internally at AISA. So, those of you that are new to Amnesty International South Africa might not know this. But yeah, over the years, we've had the privilege of working with so many remarkable young people. Personally, I've worked with over 300 young people since I started in this role in 2019. And what that looked like was that, you know, it's young people at university or community level that basically are interested in human rights work, and we provide support to them and ensure that they are able to execute on the different campaigns that they've planned for the work on campus. I've had the privilege of working with them, and some of them are here today and they form part of our alumni network, and they'll be able to share their stories with you in a short moment. But the reason why we started the alumni network is because we realized that there needed to be an opportunity for young people to exist outside of university spaces. So a lot of these young people that are here are not in university anymore. They've transitioned to workspaces. They've transitioned to different areas and doing different things, amazing things in their lives, and but they still wanted to remain active within AISA. So we thought that the alumni network would be a great platform and opportunity for these young people to still engage in the movement, or yeah, in South Africa and globally as well. So I'd like to request, especially for the alumni network, to please just keep your cameras on, because what I want to do before I share the strategy with you that we've put together, I want to actually play a short video of you guys where you introduce yourselves, and then I'll share with you what our plans are. Please just give me one moment as I am as I'm sharing my screen. Here we go. And kindly confirm if you can see my screen. Is Zosuliwe here? Please just help me um, identify if Zosuliwe is here. Is Zosuliwe here yet? Not yet.
No, no, he's not here yet.
Okay, great. All right, no problem. I'm just going to share my screen, share sound. Great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I can see it.
Great. just play this. This is just an introduction of who the Alumni Network are and the work that they're doing. So I'll let them speak for themselves.
Hi everyone, this is Nigel Tanaka-Shaw, a member of Amnesty International Alumni Network and also the former chairperson of Amnesty International UFA chapter. The reason why I joined this global movement of human rights defenders is because I wanted to be the voice of the voiceless, advocating for human rights, also promoting and raising awareness. Many people out there in South Africa, they don't know what it means to have human rights. They don't know what human rights are. That's where we come in, advocating, promoting and educating, raising awareness so that together we can fight. I encourage each and everyone to join this global movement.
Hey everyone, my name is Nondume Sozwane and I'm a Deputy Secretary for the Alumni Network. I joined Amnesty International in 2024 because I've always been passionate about defending human rights. Thank you.
Hey. I'm Zoli Samzaga. I serve as the finance officer within the Alumni Networking. My motivation for joining the Alumni Networking stemmed from my desire to continue making a positive impact and staying connected to Amnesty International mission and vision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nduduz Nene. I am part of the executive members for the Amnesty International South Africa Alumni Network, and my role is the chapter liaison. I am part of the network due to my passion for law, and I believe in the advancement of human rights, equality, and access to justice. I believe that law and knowledge can be used as an instrument to empower others. Thank you.
Today, I am Jacqueline Medise, currently serving as the Monitoring and Evaluation Officer for the Alumni Network, and I joined because I wanted to continue serving and supporting the Amnesty International campaign's work as well as the chapters.
Hello everyone, my name is Lung Lembali and I hold the position of being the Research and Partnerships with the Amnesty International South Africa. I joined Amnesty International South Africa in 2019 as a student at the University of Fort Hare. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Zusuli Wenzalo, the social media manager of the Alumni Network of Amnesty International South Africa. One of the reasons I joined Amnesty, I wanted to be part of the voices that are against human injustice, gender-based violence, discrimination, inequality, and any form of abuse that can affect our world.
Hi everyone, my name is Nokukosi Mube and I am the Monitoring and Evaluation Officer at Amnesty International South Africa Alumni Network. I joined Amnesty International South Africa because of my passion for human rights and wanting to play a part in changing the world. And for me, Amnesty International South Africa offered me that platform.
Hi everyone, Previous Patience here, and I'm the current Secretary General of the Amnesty Alumni Network. I joined Amnesty because it empowers me to be on the forefront in ensuring that the legal promises in the form of human rights become lived realities. Hi everyone.
Great. Thank you so much to everyone for availing themselves and wanting to be part of this movement. So can I get people to please clap for our alumni network? Like, we're excited to have a group of really passionate young people that are eager to continue the activism work here in South Africa. So thank you all for availing yourselves as the alumni network. And we're excited to share this journey with you all. As I mentioned, there are a couple of things that the alumni network has been busy with since we started the year. We came up with a great strategy between 2025 and 2027 that these people that you just saw now are going to be implementing. And part of our goals really are to first strengthen community and collaboration where they want to get a deeper and sustained engagement that fosters inclusive collaboration with chapters, activists, and the broader AISA movement. The second objective that the Alumni Network has is to advance human rights advocacy, campaigning, and empower activism within South Africa. And they're going to be doing this by providing support to AISA chapters, but also making sure that young people that are interested in human rights in South Africa are also have access to opportunities, right, to be active either in person or digitally, and they'll be creating a space for that too to be able to happen. The third objective that they have is that they want to enhance capacity and knowledge, right? They have a lot of experience. They've been with AISA for a long time, and they are part of the alumni network because they want to continue sharing and learning and expanding the knowledge. And these are the key things that they've committed to doing. So in the next couple of years, there are going to be some really exciting things that the alumni network is going to be working on. So I'm going to ask you to please just keep a lookout for the amazing work that these young people are going to be doing, and ensure that you follow them, you support them. And if you have any questions around how to be active as either a member of a chapter or as an activist, please just feel free to reach out to us and we will be able to get you involved, right? Another reason why the alumni network thought that this meeting was important is because they want to highlight human rights defenders, right? As you will know, AISA is prioritizing the hashtag Human Rights Defenders campaign, where we are calling on the creation of legislation that is protecting human rights defenders in South Africa, right? We've seen a lot of human rights defenders in South Africa not being protected legally, and we want to call on the government to ensure that there are measures within the legal system that protect human rights defenders, and that's what the campaign has been about. And this is the work that all of the chapters have been working on since last year around August, when we launched the report that speaks to abahlali basemjondolo and the challenges that they are facing. So with that, all of them have been inspired to take action in different capacities, and they themselves are human rights defenders or trying to be human rights defenders in their own right. So I want to encourage them to keep working on this until we win, right? We don't stop, right? And we want to create opportunities for others as well to come in and join us so that the momentum keeps going. With that in mind, I see that our executive director has just joined. Shanila Mohammed, welcome. Thank you so much for joining and being part of this meeting. And with that, I just want to hand over to Nobukosi to introduce our executive director, Shanila Mohammed, who herself is a human rights defender. And, in talking about human rights defenders, we thought it would be great to have her be the first person that starts this conversation with us, because when we started this conversation around the alumni network, it was her that said, no, we need to make sure that these people have a platform outside of universities. So thank you so much, Shanila, and I'll hand over to Nobukosi to do the introduction, and then we'll hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rejoice, for that presentation on the Alumni Network. And thank you so much once again to the Alumni Network for being involved in this event. Our next speaker, I think Rejoice has already put it really beautifully. I think she's an activist in her own right, and it is an incredible honor to welcome our keynote speaker for today, Shanila Mohammed. She is the Executive Director of Amnesty International South Africa. Shanila is a highly respected human rights, media, and development practitioner whose work spans over 30 years and multiple regions across the globe, including South Africa, the United Arab Emirates, Zimbabwe, the United Kingdom, and beyond. Throughout her career, Shanila has held numerous high-impact leadership roles, such as Africa Director for Outright Action International, South Africa Director for Oxfam GB, Principal Advisor to HIVO's IMS DFID, Program on Media and Governance in Zimbabwe, Deputy Director of the BBC Trust African Media Initiative, Europe, Middle East, and Africa Edit for Interpress Services, and a bureau chief for the Northern Emirates at the Gulf News in Dubai. Her career reflects an unwavering commitment to amplifying marginalized voices, promoting gender justice, media freedom, and LGBTIQ plus rights, and building accountability, ethical advocacy platforms throughout the continent and beyond. Shanila's extraordinary work has earned her numerous awards, including the Ellen Turing LGBTIQ Award by ARN Culture Pride in Tenerife for her impact on queer rights in Africa, the Ruler of Sharjah Award for reporting on women's affairs, and several journalism accolades such as the Medical Writer of the Year, Women's Affairs Writer of the Year, Feature Writer of the Year. Shanila Mohammed continues to inspire activists, journalists, and leaders worldwide. Her work reminds us that activism must be fearless, ethical, and community-centered. So please join me in warmly welcoming a powerhouse in global human rights movement, Shanila Muhammad.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, I'm a bit overwhelmed by that introduction. And as Rejoice knows, she knows me so well. I just don't. I'm just not great at, at sort of being put on a pedestal because I really do believe that each one of us is great and each one of us has greatness in us. But it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. I've always been really passionate about the youth work, and as Rejoice said, when Rejoice and I've been I think with Amnesty the longest. And, when I did come on board as the acting executive director, one of the things that I was a bit worried about was that, what happens to the chapters after they leave? And we need to give them a space. We need to use that energy to bring about change in the world. So I'm so thrilled to see the alumni chapter where it is today. And I read the strategy that Rejoice put together. And, I'm absolutely so proud of all the work that the youth chapters and the Alumni Network does. So a big thank you to all of you for your greatness and for your recognition of why each and every one of us has to be a human rights defender, whether we are defending our own rights or whether we are defending the rights of others. And I think, that's really where I just wanted to start my journey. So I grew up, I always say that I have this real mixed culture, which is a blessing and a curse. Okay. So, blessing because you are exposed to a lot of different things, curse because ultimately you never have a sense of belonging because you're never accepted in any particular place as being one of those. So I was born in Pakistan. My mother is Pakistani, and I came to Africa, to Zimbabwe, when I was when I was about 6 or 8 months old, and sort of grew up there, and then of course started my work. As a journalist. I mean, I became a journalist initially, and from there I moved into human rights. I mean, what triggered my, in a way, passion for human rights, I think, was that I grew up in a very violent home. My father was extremely violent. He was misogynistic. He had 5 daughters. We were all considered to be an absolute burden. And we were made to feel that way. We were made to feel that, that our birth was a mistake, was a burden. And of course, my mother, who had been brought from Pakistan to marry my father, who was second or third generation in Zimbabwe, had no support system in Zimbabwe. So she was very much alone. Her whole family was in Pakistan. She was there by herself. And I think I grew up in a household where I watched the helplessness of my mother and my father's violence that was meted out not only on my mother, but also on my elder sister. I was a middle child, and so I just kept out of the way. I would make it a point of just staying out of his way so that I didn't get beaten up. But I think my mother's helplessness was really something that all of us girls really struggled with. And interestingly, 3 of us chose the path to human rights and women's rights. And my older sister is a psychologist who has, did her master's at Princeton and then has written a number of books looking at sexual violence against children and violence against women. And my younger sister is a human rights lawyer, and she works in Australia. And I, even in my journalism years, I only focused a lot on women's rights and just in general, development and women's rights. So that was really, I think, the initial sort of realization what it feels like not to have rights, what it feels like to be helpless, what it feels like, to be controlled, what it feels like to be oppressed. And there's one particular incident I do remember was my mother. I think I must have been about 3 or 4, and I remember something happening in the household and my mother being beaten up so badly that she was unconscious and she had blood coming out of her mouth. And I remember all of us just standing there totally helpless. And it's so interesting when you're 3 or 4 years old that, the things that remain in your memory are just weird. Like one of the things that I remember was that every time my father did this, he would go and buy cream cakes at a bakery, and he would bring this box of cream cakes home. And you would think that he would bring the cream cakes home, for the kids or something, but he would keep the cream cakes in his room. And I remember every day going to open the box of cream cakes to see whether or not he had eaten any of those cream cakes. And eventually those cream cakes would just get rotten and he would throw them away. But it was just like a consistent thing that every time there was violence for some weird, strange reason, I don't know whether he bought the cream cakes to give to the kids to make us feel better, but then just didn't do it, but these are the sort of memories. So that was the childhood that I had. My mother ultimately, I think, when she was 59, my mother during this time had 3 nervous breakdowns throughout her life, and then at about 59, she contracted cancer of the ovaries, and I often think that trauma is a contributing factor. And she died. She struggled with that cancer for 16 years, and then she died. But she never left my father. She never left my father, and so that was just the world that really started my journey. Then I became a journalist, and I think I became a journalist because I really, first of all, I was a storyteller. I loved to tell stories. English was my favorite topic. I absolutely loved English. In fact, it was the only thing that I could do well. I was useless at maths, useless at science, useless at biology, but I was brilliant at English. And so I just followed that path. My father obviously did not want me to be a journalist and wanted me to become a doctor, because all parents of Asian backgrounds either want their children to become doctors, accountants, or teachers, or some nonsense like that. And if you're anything different, then you're not one. And so I went off, and with the help of my mother, actually, she gave me the money, and I went off and enrolled myself into a course, a journalism course, and then I started. And of course, I always worked really hard, and so the local newspaper would take 5 of the top people, to hire them as journalists, and I always made sure that I was the top. So at some point, I won, as I won these awards, and became a journalist. And of course, I always focused on women's issues and women's suffering. And that was the time, and now I'm giving away my age, where HIV was really at the top. Okay. I mean, it was big, it was happening. So many journalists were dying, so many people I knew were dying. It was a time when Zimbabwe wasn't the Zimbabwe it is today, where, we had a great health facility. We had people were really getting a great education. And so, a lot of my work focused on the whole HIV/AIDS situation and, people who were dying, etc. And then there came a moment in my life when my mother wanted us to get married. And, my father was racist, very racist, but he wasn't just racist. He was also he was also about the fact that, we come from a Pakistani background, and so therefore it's more cost. I think race was something they didn't even think about. Okay, race was like, you just don't go there. Caste is something, or where you come from. So there were very few Pakistani families in Zimbabwe, and so he said to us, you've got to marry Pakistanis and you've got to go to Pakistan. And of course, we resisted. But then, my mother, and this is where I sometimes think women, and I'm not judging my mother, but I think my mother, didn't want any more sort of violence or anything. And in her way, she thought she was protecting us, and so she sort of emotionally blackmailed me and my sisters and said, "Look, get married. If you don't, it'll be a huge problem." And so I allowed myself, for my mother, to get talked into an arranged marriage, and of course that did not go well. But I did get two amazing sons out of it. But it was during that time that I moved to Dubai. I got a job there with the Gulf News, and I was the bureau chief for the Northern Emirates based in Sharjah. And I started to see a world that was horrifying, not only for me personally, but also it was the start of the first Gulf War. It was the time when CNN was coming into people's homes and broadcasting one side of the story. And what I would see, myself on the ground in Kuwait, in Iran, in Iraq, was very different to what I would see on the screens. And really, I spent a few years covering the war, the first Gulf War, and but also the Arab world is an extremely horrendous world. I mean, I always say this to my staff that people who go running off to Dubai, and all that, it's a very racist and misogynistic and just brutal world. So I used to write stories about, one of the things the Arabs did was they would put tie little babies onto camels during the camel races. So they would buy these babies from poor people and they would tie them onto the camels. And then when the camels started to run, the babies would start to cry, and this would make the camel excited, and the camel would run faster and faster and faster. And sometimes these babies would just get to the end of the thing and they'd be dead. And of course, you could never report on this sort of stuff. I saw the way in which, people were treated. Camels were given so much more preference than people, and there were so many rights violations. And one story in particular that really touched me was I had various beats, and one of the beats that I covered in journalism was the medical beat as well as the Asian community. I remember going to the hospital one day and checking up if there were any stories, and all my contacts there told me about the Sri Lankan woman who had been brought in that morning, who had fallen out of a 7 or 8-story building and landed on a car and had broken her spine. In a Muslim country, you may or may not know this, but if you are found guilty of, suicide is against the law. So if you try to kill yourself or whatever, you've broken the law. There's no compassion when it comes to that sort of thing. So when I looked at her records, and I was lucky I had lots of contacts, and this is where my Pakistani background came in because I speak the language fluently, and a lot of the doctors there were from either India or Pakistan, and they all spoke the same language. And I, was able to get access to her reports. And, what I saw there was absolutely horrendous. She had been sexually violated. They had found parts of bottles inside her. These people had been sticking things inside her. And so I was able to get in to see her. And when I spoke to her, this woman was just distraught. And she told me that she had been brought there as a housemaid. And she had been told that she was going to be there and there were little children and she was going to be looking after this family. And when she arrived there, it turned out to be just two men in an apartment, and they kept her as a sexual slave. Basically, she was trafficked. And, she said that they would have these parties and they would bring these men, and every night they would sexually torture her and do all sorts of things to her. And the one night when she heard them coming, she couldn't bear it anymore. So she opened the window and she jumped out of the window and she landed on a car. And the car broke her fall, which is why she survived, but it damaged her spine. So when I went to the police, that was another one of my beats to follow up on the story. The police told me that, well, they were going to be charging her because they didn't even say it was suicide. They said that according to the owner of the apartment, she had been trying to steal something. And basically, when they caught her, she tried to escape and she jumped out of the window and she landed on the car. And so she was going to be charged with theft. And then and then after that she would be deported. I went back to the Gulf News office, and I remember sitting at my desk and thinking to myself, I mean, my gut and and just the evidence before me. And this is where I really became so interested in evidence, told me that her version of events was the right version of events, because the doctors also told me the types of injuries she had, internal injuries, didn't come from the fall and she couldn't have inflicted them on herself. And so I took all of this to my editor, and I remember my editor was a Syrian man. And I remember saying to him, look, I don't believe the police. I think that, what she told me is absolutely true. And that's the story that I'm going to write. And he turned around and said to me, well, you know what? I don't believe her, because, any woman who leaves her home and her young children and comes out here to work has got to be a prostitute. So she must have been a prostitute and she must have deserved everything she got. And I remember standing there looking at him and thinking to myself, I mean, really, are you for real? And then I said, well, in that case, I'm not writing anything. I'm actually not going to write the story. If I can't write the story according to the way that I see it, then I'm not. And eventually we came to a compromise where I would start with her story and then put in what the police said, which is fair because, in journalism, you have to give both sides of the story. But I think, my horror of the Arab world was just mounting. It just kept on mounting. But, eventually this poor woman was sentenced to 6 months in prison. She was in a wheelchair. And then after she completed her 6 months, she was deported. So she arrived there on two legs, two young children. She left there totally paralyzed, totally brutalized, and absolutely no justice. And I think that, I realized that the Arab world is not a place that I wanted to be anymore. And so, and of course, I also was extremely unhappy in my arranged marriage. It wasn't working out. There were issues, massive issues there. And I decided one day that I'd actually had enough, and I wanted to come back. I wanted to go back. And so I had been talking to my sisters and saying, "Look, I'm done. I think I need to come back." And my youngest son, who is now 32, was 6 months at the time, and I had another 4-year-old boy, and I realized, and I just thought, because I grew up in a Western environment, I just thought, it's as simple as just saying to a man that, look, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. Can we just agree to separate? And then I would, go. And this was like I just believed this was going to happen. And then when I brought it up with my ex-husband and said, look, I can't do this anymore. I really want to go home. I don't want to be in a marriage anymore. He became aggressive. He became very violent. And then, of course, started to say to me, well, this is an Islamic Sharia country and the children belong to me and you can't take the children out. And so, of course, that was something I hadn't even factored in. And so then, I had been working for an Iranian man. I used to do his business correspondence in the evenings. And I remember asking him that evening saying, look, Mr. Habib, can he do this? Can I, will he, because for a moment I didn't believe him. And then Mr. Habib confirmed for me that actually he could, here, there in the Arab world, women actually have no rights. And what the man says is exactly what happens. And so he said to me, all he has to do is say that you're having an affair or something is happening, and they will pick you up and put you in jail, and then you'll rot there for 6 months or a year, having to prove your innocence. And so, of course, that threw me into a massive panic. And I thought, oh my God. And then, I began this whole process of trying to figure out how to get out of there. How do I get out of there? How do I get out of there? And then, that was the time that my mother actually was diagnosed with cancer. And it gave me a reason to say, look, I need to go home. And I think at the time, my ex-husband said to me, well, you have to promise me you're going to come back, and made all sorts of threats if I didn't. But long story short, I eventually ended up leaving with the kids and going to Zimbabwe, and I knew very well that I wasn't going to come back. But 6 weeks later, I think I informed him I wasn't coming back, and he then came, and of course we began this really horrible, very ugly divorce that took 4 years to get through, and eventually I got custody of the kids. So that was, I went there and I started to work in journalism again. And that was the time when I started working with Interpress Services, which is headquartered in Rome. And, I worked as a Europe Middle East editor first, and then I took over the Africa desk as well. So that was my thing. And around that time in 2000, Zimbabwe started to go down, and it started to go down really quickly. There had been a referendum, and that was when the MDC had won a lot of votes, and Mugabe was getting very jittery, and horrible things started to happen. That's when the farmers started to get killed. A lot of stuff started to happen. And I was working as a journalist at the time. Well, I was an editor, not a journalist. And I was talking to Moletsi Mbeki, who was an old friend of mine, who, they used to be in exile, all the ANC and the PAC guys, so I knew all of them. I knew Oliver Tambo, he was a wonderful man. Thabo Mbeki, they were in and out. Yasser Arafat, I have pictures with Yasser Arafat as well. I interviewed him on a number of occasions. So, I knew all these guys, and I had been in touch with Moletsi and Tendai Dubinchena, who was the son of the first black judge in Zimbabwe. He was also based in South Africa. And we managed to get some funding, and we decided to have a conference at SIA, at WITS, that was called the Zimbabwe Crisis. And I basically presented a paper that looked at the use of violence by ZANU-PF throughout, and in particular Robert Mugabe. And then, we had a number of speakers. We had the ANC was there. We had Aziz Pahad was there, Issof Pahad. We had Zweli Vavi was there. He was with Kosatu at the time. And then we also invited the MDC, and we invited ZANU-PF because we thought, what? And I think our goal at the time was to say to the ANC government that, you've got to Thabo Mbeki was very, at that time, he was doing this quiet diplomacy nonsense, and Zimbabweans were flooding across the borders. And we were saying, look, you've got to sort out what's happening in Zimbabwe. Otherwise, you are going to end up with Zimbabweans in South Africa. Right? If you don't fix that, that's what's going to happen. And of course, they didn't take anything seriously. But the conference was a huge success. But I remember walking out of SIA, and of course, in Zimbabwe, anyone who is Zimbabwean knows of the Central Intelligence Organization. It's like the CIA. They are everywhere. And they were there at the conference, and I remember going up to them. One of them coming up to me during the tea break and saying to me, well, eventually you do have to come home, and we'll see you at home. And but you know what? I've never allowed that sort of stuff to deter me. Plus, my kids were there, and So anyway, I went back. I was the only one who went back to Zimbabwe. And about 2 days later, I was driving to work. And, Zimbabwe doesn't and still doesn't have the levels of crime that South Africa has. So a lot of people still don't lock car doors and things, when you're driving. And I remember I was driving and I stopped at a traffic light. I was going to the office. And as I stopped at this traffic light, four men jumped into my car and basically started shouting at me and hitting me on, because I was driving, so hitting me, just fisting me in the face and, calling me, my India, go back to India, we don't want you Indians here. And then saying, yes, we know that you go to South Africa and you go there and you speak badly about our president and, we will fix you and blah, blah. And I'm sure the women can relate to this. There were two things that were in my head at the time. One was that I was praying that I wouldn't be raped. Okay. And I don't know whether it was that I had worked through the HIV/AIDS pandemic and, and that was a big fear that, you're going to get raped and something bad is going to happen. So again, during that time, and it's difficult because you guys are so young, but during that time, women would get raped, and here in South Africa as well, hey, women would get raped, and then you'd go for those tests, HIV tests, and there was a 6-week window period. So you'd go for one immediately, and then you'd go for a second test, and if your test came up negative, generally what would happen is women would be so relieved that they didn't get AIDS that the rape would become secondary trauma, if that makes sense, because your biggest fear was that you were going to get AIDS. And so, of course, that was my thing in my head. And these guys were the guy in front was just hitting me all the time. And I still have remnants of it, my jaw got fractured and, I was quite badly hit because they were hitting me on my thing, and the guys from behind were pulling my hair. And anyway, so this went on and on and on, and they made me drive around. Now, I understand the local language, and at that time there was some riots taking place, and they kept on getting radioed and being asked to come. And so they started speaking to each other. And this was like about 2 hours after making me drive. They just made me drive and drive. And then they made me stop in front of the central police station in Harare. And they said, they were talking to each other and they said, well, what do we do? Shall we take her in? And then the other guy said, no, well, we know where she lives. We can always go fetch her. Let's just leave her here now because we need to go. And then they turned to me and they said, yeah, this is not over. We know where you are and we know we are going to come for you. I remember sitting there, guys, like, I don't even know how long. I sat there and I was so traumatized, and there was blood coming out of my ear, and I remember being so traumatized, and I just didn't. I just sat there frozen for ages. And the one thing that I do remember was I looked across at the police station, the central police station, a massive building, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm sitting here across from the police station. I can't even go in and report this because I basically, yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to wrap up now. But basically, because I don't have any rights. So I then called my lawyer. And he said to me, look, go to the hospital, go and get yourself sorted. I went to the emergency room. I then went and picked up my kids, and he told me to take my kids and go somewhere where they wouldn't know an address. And so I went to stay with some friends with the boys. And then I called Moletsi here and Tendai, and then they were like, look, I think you need to leave. They're going to come back for you. And then, of course, the question came as to how would I get into South Africa, because Moletsi had said to me, don't come in and ask for asylum because asylum seekers get treated really badly. So I then had a friend who was an editor of a newspaper, and he basically hired me to be the foreign correspondent here. And it was on that basis that I got my first work permit. And then I moved within days. I think it was about 3 or 4 days with the children. And I moved to South Africa. And that was when I decided I was going to cross over from just reporting on human rights to doing something about human rights. And that's when I took my first job with Oxfam. Yeah, and eventually my journey into becoming a human rights defender began. But I think I will always be a journalist in my soul, because it's my love. It will always be my love. And Rejoice knows that I have such a sharp editor's eye that the minute anybody sends me any copy or anything, I pick up on editorial mistakes like instantly. I think my eye is trained so well in that regard. But basically, that was my journey, guys. And now I am deeply, deeply committed to change, and deeply committed to women's rights, and deeply committed to making a change. And there's nothing that deters me, whether it is death threats, which I even get as an Amnesty person, or anything else. I'm absolutely deeply committed. And I think, a lot of it has got to do with the journey that I've been on. And thank you so much for listening to me. I appreciate it, and I hope it wasn't too gruesome. But as you know, living in today's world, rights violations are not they're not pretty, and sometimes we have to go through these hardships. So thank you, guys. Thanks, Rejoice.
Thank you so much, Shanila. That was really inspiring, honestly. And I would like to open the floor for questions. Um, so if you have any questions for Shanila, please write it in the chat box as we open our question and answer round session. So yes, this is your chance to ask any questions that you want her to answer. But in the meantime, as they're typing, I would like to ask, you've worked at the intersection of journalism and activism. How do you see media shaping or failing to shape the human rights landscape today?
Thank you so much for that really, really important question. I think the media plays such a critical role. And this is why I'm still so passionate. I mean, I spent many years, of my life training journalists, and I still do. But I think that, the media is so critical because it acts as the interface between the public and the actual happenings. Okay, so I mean, really, a lot of us will see the world through the eyes of the media. That's where we get our news from. That's where we get our information from. And now with this, and just one thing you're going to laugh at is, when I became a journalist, I had to type my copy. We call it copy, the one that goes to the newspaper. I had to make 3 copies, and I had to put carbon, 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 and I had a typewriter. Right. So imagine that from when I started to where we are today, how technology has just blown up, and now everything is in our homes. And I think the biggest danger that we're facing is the loss of truth. People just don't know what to believe anymore. People just don't know what is true. And I think it all started from that whole thing of embedded journalism. You may not know this, but maybe look it up. That during the Gulf War, and I think it was the second Gulf War, where America would embed journalists with the forces, the security forces on the ground, and they would go there and they would be covering the war. But basically, that's when they started to get really biased. And then, of course, after 9/11, we saw absolute bias, where journalists were just no longer telling the truth. They were basically telling what they thought that the people who own the newspapers or whatever want to believe. So I don't believe in objective journalism. I don't think there is such a thing. I think everyone has an agenda, and I think this is why God has given us brains. It's for us to actually determine, to read, and to really, and you guys are all educated, so it's really about you coming to your own truth, and you can only do that with knowledge.
Thank you so much, Shanila. Tidi Rankwe sent a question and she asked, what keeps you going? What makes you believe that change is possible?
So I operate on two levels. So I'm not a very religious person because I saw what religion does. Okay, so I'm not really into formalized religion, but I'm extremely spiritual. So I do believe that there is, something out there. I think religion was forced on us, in various ways. I didn't bring up my children Muslim, so I'm very sort of spiritual in that way, and my children are very spiritual. And one of the things that I do believe in is that keeps me going is gratitude. So I feel, every day I wake up with a sense of gratitude, and that sense of gratitude gives me is also something that makes me think it comes with responsibility. So, if you are in a position that you're in where you can make a difference, then you have to use that power. And so, I never think about myself. And I think that is the one thing, I always think about, even in my work, all my years, even and Rejoice has witness to my work at Amnesty. For me, it's always about the people. And I always say to Rejoice and to everyone in my team that this is not about us, okay? This is about us supporting the people whose rights have been violated. And I think, when you make it about others, when you make it about solidarity with others. And again, Amnesty is a powerful organization. Amnesty, even in today's world, is one of those organizations that can make a difference because we are not tied down by finances and controlled by the finances of these governments. So again, we are one of the few organizations that can make a difference. And so, for me, it's really about and I always told myself I can't afford the luxury to feel sorry for myself because I have a roof over my head. My children are fine. I am fine. I need to look at the people who are struggling. I need to look at the people who are out there who don't have this. And that is my driving force. It's really about taking it away from your ego and yourself and making it about people whose rights are violated. And of course, I always think about my mother. And, I always think about that maternal energy. And I always think about the fact that, you know, if I could have done anything to protect her over those years, I would have, but I couldn't. And so now I will protect any woman that I can protect, that I have the power to do so, and any man as well, because, it's not just women whose rights are violated, but it's a mindset. It's really a mindset where even when times are hard, you refuse to feel sorry for yourself because you know what, you have no right to. You have what many people don't.
Thank you. And another question comes from Solomon Tawandandondo. They asking, what are your thoughts on media bias, especially on issues of race? For example, it's easier for media to mention race and the whole identity of a perpetrator when it is a person of color, but not the same when it is a white perpetrator.
So, guys, I mean, and again, I always refer to Rejoice because she and I always have these conversations. But, I don't think, I think racism is alive and well. I think it exists in media. I think it exists in every organization. I think it exists in our lives and in our world. Look at Palestine, again, people of color's lives have no value. If it's, when it was Ukraine, everyone jumped up and down. In South Africa, racism is still alive. I think, my personal view is that there was no real accountability for the work, for the racism that was, that Black people and people of color had to go through. And so you still have a massive, I honestly, sometimes I don't even think that many, and I don't mean this in a racist way, but many white people don't even believe that they are racist, and I think that, this whole thing about, and just, I'm just going to tell you one thing, and Rejoice, it'll be really quick, I promise. But, just to let you know about why what you're saying is absolutely true. when it comes to the media is when I was in Zimbabwe and it was World Press Freedom Day, and the white farm killings had just started happening, and we had a wonderful minister called Edwin Zvobgo. And there was a woman called Kate Adie, who was a war correspondent for the BBC. So they used to fly her in wherever there was a war, and she'd put on this helmet, and bombs would be going off, and she'd be talking about, the war, etc. So she was flown in to speak. There was an event taking place, and Minister Zwobko and her were the keynote speakers. And Minister Zwobko, so she, started to speak, and she talked about, how horrendous it was that, these white farmers were being brutalized and were being killed and blah, blah, blah. And she went on and on and on. And anyway, then Minister Zvobko spoke, and he started off by saying to her, he said, listen, this lady, this young lady came to my office. She came to speak to me. And, she asked me, she said, Minister Zvobko, what do you think about all these white farmers that are being killed? And he said, and I said to her that, look, I think it's terrible. I don't think people should be killed. Then he said, I said to her, do you know that the first person that was killed in this whole thing was a black policeman? And then he said there were two other black farm workers that died before the first white man died. Do you know their names? Do you know who they are?
Mm.
And she just couldn't say anything. Then he turned the question to the room, and it was full of us journalists. And he said to us, can any of you tell me the name of the black policeman that was the first casualty of these killings? And I am so ashamed to tell you that not one of us could say the man's name. And this, for me, is the brainwashing that has happened. And it was such a pivotal moment in my life as a journalist, because it made me understand how brainwashed even we become to believe that white lives are more superior than others. And that was such a pivotal moment. So yes, there is racism. It is there. It is in our face. And the fight is not over, people. The fight will never be over. And we have to continue. We are making progress, and the world is a better place for you guys, for our kids, and hopefully for your kids. But we must never, ever put down the baton, and we must never stop calling out racism, because it's there.
Thank you, Shanila. Just two more questions and then yes. So the one question is from Jessica Bloom. She asks, human rights activists are often looked down by the media or selective of what they want them to advocate. What do you wish more people understood about activism? And Nobuhle asked, what is your advice to someone experiencing gender-based violence or who has a close relation with someone experiencing gender-based violence, especially in instances where that violence is protected or excused by religion and tradition?
So I think in the first question, I think that, and this is something that I have lived my life according to, and it's advice I give my team, it's advice I give my children, that you must always do the right thing. Okay, so I think, we have a built-in sense of justice. We know when something is right and when something is wrong. So, for example, we know, I've been watching this General Mkhitaryan thing, right? So I know that, many human rights defenders have been taken out to protect certain people. We know that Babita Deokaran, that, all these people who have died in these hails of bullets have died because they were whistleblowers, etc. The problem with the media in South Africa is that there's so much bias on both sides that, somewhere in the middle there lies the truth. And I think and this is where organizations like ours and people like you are important, because, we Amnesty is an evidence-based organization. We gather evidence. I mean, as I speak, South Africa is using our evidence at the ICJ. We are continuing to give South Africa evidence to be used at the ICJ. So again, we are an organization that is deeply rooted in the truth. And I think that that is really what we have to strive towards. So yes, the media is biased, but I think it's really about us being able to interpret what is true and what is not true. And I believe we all have the intellect and the capacity to do so. When it comes to gender-based violence and religion, I think that is a really, really, really difficult space to be in. And I really feel for whoever is in that space. And what I would say to you is reach out to organizations like ours, reach out to someone like me, reach out to Rejoice, reach out to any of us, and we will try to assist. Okay. I mean, obviously, a lot of women, it's an economic thing sometimes. It's also patriarchy. We have to dismantle patriarchy, guys. And, I'm not here trying to tell you what to believe in and what not to believe in, but I think the problem with formalized religion is that it hinges on patriarchy. It makes men superior, and obviously men use that to control women. But also, I think, the whole use of violence, abuse, and punishment, exists in that whole cycle. So if anybody is experiencing or knows of somebody, please get in touch with us, okay? We can't promise that, we don't have a magic wand, but we will help you to navigate it. We'll put you in touch with people who can. Reach out to me. I'm not somebody who sits on a pedestal. Any one of you can reach out to me at any point. It's not an issue for me. I mean, obviously Rejoice is your person, and I would not ever want to disrespect Rejoice in any way. I am here, and you can reach me through Rejoice if you want to, or you can reach out to me directly. It really doesn't. It's not an issue, guys. But here to help. So whoever asked that question, please reach out, and we will try to assist in any way that we can.
Thank you so much, Shanila. Just lastly, just a random question. When it's all said and done, if your activism journey were a movie, what would the title be?
I think the title would be, I think my title would be, there's that, the title, okay, now, and it's going to sound really stupid because he's a man and he's an extremely irritating man who I can't stand. But I don't know if you guys remember the Terminator. And remember that when they crush him and then he says, "I'll be back." That'll be me. So that'll be my movie title. I'll be back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for availing yourself. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It was really inspiring, and I know everyone here has been truly inspired. So thank you, thank you, thank you
Thanks.
so much. And
Thank you, Nobukosi.
thank
I
you.
really am grateful, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. So please, I see some of my favorite people. Yeah, Jackie is somebody I love dearly. So hello, Jackie. I see some people that I'm really, really fond of who have been with us and stayed the path, and really grateful to you guys. And please stay with us, stick it out, and let's make the difference. Every single tiny step that we take is a step towards a better world. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you,
Take care.
Sandas. I love you too.
Thank you. And so, I would like to move on to the next session of our this is our last session, so please stay. It's called the Alumni Voices. And so from the Alumni Network, we three people want to share their basically their activism journey, because like I said, the title of our event is called Voices of Change. So it was only right that we hear from at least some of our alumni network members of their journey of their activism. And so firstly, I would love to introduce Zilungi Lembali. She's awaiting admission as an attorney, joined AISA in 2019, actually, and chairperson the AISA chapter at the University of Fort Hare. Fun fact about her, she founded these chapters. So she's here to just share a bit about her activism.
Thank you so much, Nobukosi. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here with you all.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so my name is Zilungile, as Nobukosi has said. My surname is Mbali, and I joined AISA in 2019 as a student at the University of Fort Hare. How I found out about the organization is through social media, because there was something that was happening, and then there was going to be an AGM, an NDA AGM, which was going to be in Rosebank. And I was in East London at the time. So I managed to make it through and come to Joburg and join the AGM. And I found it very interesting, and I was willing to establish the student chapters at Forte because it was non-existent at the time. So I asked for assistance from Rejoice to assist me establish the chapters, and yeah, it was a very successful work that I did. I started in East London, and then we went to Alice in 2022, I think. So both of them were working very well when I finished my law degree. I see that East London is still functioning until date. So yeah, that's all about me. So I'll just wait for the questions from Nobukosi that I think she wants to ask me.
Thank you so much, Zilungile. I want to ask, you've led not just one, but two chapters. What were some of the most rewarding or challenging parts of the journey?
Okay, so as I've said that I did these chapters, and it was a great thing that I worked with people who saw or had the same vision as I did about these human rights and advocating for human rights, and wanting to be the voice of the voiceless in their communities. So then we had the first, I'm just going to start with the achievements that we had. I think after we established the chapters, I think the first year after we established the East London chapter, we had like more than 100 supporters um and members. I think I'm just going to combine them, and then we collaborated with some of the internal organizations that had almost a similar vision as ours. And then the challenges that we had was that we could not recruit as many members as supporters. As you know, that the supporters as members in AISA. So then members, you have to pay some amount, and yeah, that was one of our challenges, that people didn't want to pay the amount for being members until you have to convince them. And then we also had issues around registration of our chapter at the university. You had to go to the student parliament. Well, it was a back and forth battle until I left University of Forte. So those are the challenges that we had. Yes,
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you so much, Zilungile. I think it's really inspiring that you were able to take the initiative to actually start an Amnesty chapter at a university, especially because anyone like who runs societies on campus know how hard it is to get people to join. So well done to you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. I'd like to present our next speaker, Jacqueline Mudise. She is a committed human rights advocate, communication specialist, and researcher, and she's currently completing her master's in migration and displacement advocates. So over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Nobukosi, and thank you to the Alumni Network as well as the attendees for being here tonight. So, as Nobukosi has mentioned, I'm Jacqueline Modisa. I refer to myself as a global communicator and social scientist, but I've been with Amnesty International since 2018 and currently serving as the Monitoring and Evaluation Officer for the Alumni Network.
I would like to ask what brought you to Amnesty International and how has your activism evolved since your journey?
Thank you for that question. So it all started in 2018. Just like Zungila, I had also seen I believe it was a Facebook post, and they were requesting for volunteers for the Refugee Rights Network project, for to develop the project basically, and that was in 2018. So it all started there, and I've been with AISA since from that point on in different capacities, and it has also moved to me also being a fully paid member since then. So I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that I have gained as well as like the networks that I've been exposed to with the chapters and the amazing chapters with the university and community chapters, but it has definitely been quite exciting just from that social media post.
Okay, and just one last question. What does it take to ensure the work of the alumni network stays both impactful and inclusive, especially in a space that is just constantly shifting?
Like Joyce mentioned when she introduced the Alumni Network, she mentioned that the Alumni Network serves the role of ensuring that it advocates outside of the usual channels, which would be the university and community chapters, but that we operate in our various communities as well as our workspaces, ensuring that the work and the advocacy work in which AISA does is also known out there, promoting human rights as well as supporting the chapters with the campaigns that they do. So with regards to how the Alumni Network ensures that the work in which AISA does remains impactful and is ever adaptable to the changing environments is by always ensuring that we are agile in how we do things so we don't remain to the same scripts that we have always conducted our activism work. And I'm sure we have all noticed as activists here on the call, we would always utilize different ways of doing the advocacy work, whether it be pickets or doing online campaigns as well. And those are ways in which we ensure that we remain quite active in how we do things and agile, as well as collaborations, whether it be with the universities, the communities, working together definitely does ensure that we reach more people. So that's how we ensure that we don't just stick to the circle that we're in as the Amnesty International community, but that we also work with other institutions and individuals that might not necessarily understand what we do, but give us the opportunity to be able to share the work in which that we do, either as activists or as the alumni network, or even as the broader Amnesty International community.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I'd like to move on to our next, our final alumni voice speaker is Sanders Mandiziva. Joined the University of Fort Hare chapter, served as a secretary in 2023 and vice chairperson in 2024, and has been at the forefront of several impactful initiatives. So please welcome Sanders.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Unfortunately, I was traveling. I'm just arriving now. I won't be able to open my camera, but yeah, I'm here for it. Hey, Nobunkosi, you butchered. My surname is Madziva.
Oh, okay. I will remember that. And the funny thing is, you also are pronouncing my name wrong. It's Nobukosi.
Okay, okay.
So it's good that we both corrected each other.
No, not a big problem, not a problem. Yeah, it's just Sanders Madziva here. I joined Amnesty International in uh, um, 2022 with the guidance of people who are in the house right now, Silungile Mpali, who was the first speaker of the alumni, and previous patients. I'm not so sure if she was around. She's actually the person who invited me and said, hey, Sanders, what's up? Would you not like to join and be part of this movement? And that's how I became part of the Amnesty International. And it has been a great journey with Zilungile Mbali, Rejoice, Jacqueline, and everyone else. Yeah, I think you can pose your questions now.
Okay, I would like to ask, Now that you're part of the alumni network, how do you see yourself continuing to contribute to human rights work?
Well, that's a well put question. Now that I'm part of the Amnesty International South Africa Alumni Network, I see my role in human rights work evolving from frontline activism to strategic support, mentorship, and advocacy within broader platform. As an alumnus, I carry both the experience and the responsibility to amplify the vision in new space that we have as the South African Amnesty International alumni. So I also want to support the next generation of activists by sharing the knowledge that I've acquired, offering also mentorship and creating opportunity for them to strive. And I do understand that it is important, how important it is to feel supported in this work, and especially when facing resistance or burnout, as these are the things that I also went throughout as part of my journey. And then beyond that, I also see myself contributing by continuing to engage in policy conversations that I also have been part of community education and collaborative campaigns, with a belief that human rights doesn't end when a formal role ends. Just like I was a secretary and vice chairperson of the University of Fort Hare. Now that I'm just a member of the alumni, it doesn't end just because I don't have a specific role, but it becomes part of how I live, I work, and I lead in whatever space I occupy. I think that's basically all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sanders. And that concludes our alumni voices, and that concludes basically our session. But I wanna just throw just a fun question. 1 minute, you have 1 minute to answer this question to just all our speakers, Rejoice, Jacqueline, Sanders, and Zilungile. I want to start with Zilungile first. So Zilungile, if you could have one lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would that person be? You have only 1 minute to answer that question. Zulungile, are you online? Okay, you know what? Let me just move on to Jacqueline. No, actually, let me move on to Sanders. Sanders, if your life had a theme song, what would it be?
If my life had been a song, what would
Yes,
it
what would it be?
It's a tough one. But
You have a few seconds.
I wish I had known this earlier. I wish I had known this
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, fine. Jacqueline, if you could host a dinner with just three famous people, who are you inviting?
Oh, that's such a difficult question. Um, I would invite three famous. I would
Yeah.
invite this other YouTuber. Okay, maybe she's famous to me, but I would invite this other YouTuber. And then I would also invite the South African president. And then finally, I would invite um perhaps like I think a soccer player, just so that you can have different voices in the room. Yeah.
Okay, okay, I like that. Rejoice, I would like to ask you, if you could instantly speak any language fluently, which one would you choose?
That's a difficult one because my first thought was French because it's just so, you know, it does the
Mm,
things. But
yeah.
I think I would just speak like the language. of understanding people's minds. So being able to just read what a person is thinking, what what they're feeling without us having to even utter a word. So that's the language that I would yes want to speak as a
Interesting.
superpower. Yeah, yeah.
Sanders says you got us there. Okay, Zilungile, are you back? Can you hear me? Okay, she seems like she can't hear me. So I guess you know what?
I am back, no, because I was just attending the loo.
Okay,
So,
just a question. If you could have one lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would that person be?
sorry, can you repeat your question?
If you could have lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
That would be my grandmother. She's
Oh.
like,
Okay, thank you so much, Zulungile. And I just want to thank all the speakers for today. Shanila, who's not here right now, but Jacqueline, Rejoice, Zulungile, Sanders, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Voices of Change Alumni Network. Today we've heard powerful stories, held visions, and real examples of what it means to be a human rights defender. But as in the words of the former United Nations Secretary Kofi Annan, our work is far from over, and indeed it will never be. And therefore, the work doesn't end here. This is your moment to stay connected, to keep showing up, to keep speaking out, and to continue making change in your own spaces. So if you haven't already joined, Amnesty International South Africa #1 has a membership fee that you can pay, which is just 100 Rand, and it's for the whole year. And you get benefits and you get to get invited to events. We just recently had the annual general meeting for all Amnesty International South Africa members at Wits University. So this is also your chance to just get involved through the AISA membership, or you can join a chapter at your university as a volunteer. I loved what Jacqueline said, that I think she said the same thing as Ilungile, that they just saw they saw Amnesty online. Jacqueline just saw that they were looking for volunteers. So please follow Amnesty on social media. I know that there are times where they are looking for volunteers, and I was actually really proud to see that when we went to the AGM, the board of directors was mostly people who were youth members. So this is genuinely your chance to get involved, volunteer, sign up for memberships, join our university chapters. You don't necessarily have to hold a leadership position. So yes, and then yeah, so this is your space to stay engaged, collaborate with other change makers, and be part of a growing community and defending human rights beyond campus. So, yeah, let your voice be part of something bigger, whether you are organizing in communities, writing, teaching, or just getting started. You are the voice of change. So, thank you everyone for being here, and thank you all the speakers once again for sharing your stories with us. It's been a great evening.
Thank you, Nobukosi. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
I
everyone.
Bye.